there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss now! After Pat Baby, come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will be crushed.
Everything I've said is true, it's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie, I saw them with my own eye!
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane!
This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
Anything to do with that specifically or not, though?
I can't remember if it was towards the end of last year or at the beginning of this year, but I had on Jared Beck, who is the lawyer that sued the DNC for fraud back in 2017. He's the guy where we got that quote from the DNC's fucking worm lawyer, where like we could go in a back room and smoke cigars and pick the candidate if we want to, you know, we do this thing. Like that's where that's the lawsuit that comes from. Jared got thrown the fuck off of Twitter for just raging on Kamala Harris back in like 2018 or some shit. And he goes, and then I'll shut the fuck up and we can jump into this. But he goes, this is going to be the year of the secession. You mark my words, he said, we are going to see a legitimate secession movement all across the country starting this year. And he was wrong in his estimate that Texas was going to do it in like by like May. But I mean, those conversations are happening all over the place, man. And it's, you know, not from the usual just hedge fund, I want to get a corporate capture going on of this entire geographical area. It's, you know, people who are, you know, individual liberty-minded voluntarist association framed and dedicated to living out not just the rest of their days, but understanding that their kids and grandkids and great grandkids are going to be allowed to roam free and think critically and, you know, have things like natural immunity and a body that belongs to them.
Right, which is the opposite direction where some would be likely to take us if we don't stand the hell up. And I think we are. I don't know. So anyway, everybody, welcome back to the Deep Share. I have with me a great guest tonight, the legend, Mr. Steve Poikonen. How's it going, man?
I'm doing good, bro. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Cool, man. And yeah, just on what we were talking about, I mean, that's where my head's at right now. We're like, I need to see a lot of people standing up right now. I think that everybody needs to see this start to happen more and more. And I don't know, what are you seeing, man? I mean, you got your finger on the pulse pretty close usually. And like, I'm seeing a lot of positive out there, in my opinion. I'm seeing a lot of good out there, but then of course the negativity, the bullshit creeps in, you know.
I think that there are more of us than there are. Somebody was explaining it to me the other day. There's like 20% of the population dead set against, you know, mandates and forced inoculation, knows their shit, has the information ready to go, not so necessarily in the streets about it, significantly less than that 20% is in the streets, and that's a shame, but we're kind of coming to a point. But then 20% all the way for the jabby jabs and all the way for forced inoculation, don't give a damn about informed consent, could care less that the only person with any liability for this product is you, the person who receives it, not the manufacturer, not the distributor or administrator of it, not the government that's issuing the mandate, just you for taking it. You're the only person who gets liability. They don't care. They just they think they're broken. They're broken, and they think if they do the thing, then the bad thing will go away.
Yeah, man.
And they don't realize that the bad thing is never going away because they did the thing. So now the people who are running the show know that they can get them to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it can be increasingly more severe, or they can, throw a bunch at you and then pull back. Right. Maybe let you think you have some freedom and then roll it back out again. Oh, here's another lockdown. Here's another mandate. Okay. Now you have to stay inside your house, triple masked. And the only thing you can breathe, we're going to Spaceballs with this, is government provided air in a can. Yeah. I mean, that's absurd, but is it?
Oh, is it? Really? It might sound absurd until you start looking into everything that's getting rolled out as like this one perfect system. And I like to always mention to people that, that oneness, that interconnectivity that's natural to us, just like everything else, they like to mimic. And so that's what they're doing. That's why they're spreading that word unity around. I don't like hearing the government talk about unity. That's creepy to me. They're supposed to be talking about separation, and this is why you should remain apart. But I don't know, man. It's just like, what I'm wondering is like, go ahead.
I was going to say, to that point, and then sorry to cut you up, but to that point, whenever the government says, whenever the state says, we need to get together on this, they never mean them, because there are all kinds of exemptions for the jabby job for federal employees. Cops aren't taking it. I just saw it today.
Congress.
Where, Congress exempt as fuck. Like they're not, it's, so when they talk about we, they mean you, peasant, not we. That was one of the things that was always so hilarious about Bernie Sanders' campaign. That not me, us. There was no Bernie in the Bernie got 3 houses. Bernie takes more money from the pharmaceutical industry than like anybody right now. There was no us. No. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
He was a sham, and he's proven to be a sham, So that's unfortunate because a lot of people I know were really on board with Bernie, you know what I mean? And I was always nervous. I was like, they don't let people hang out if they're not onto the theme, if they're, I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Well, Chris Hedges in 2015, right after Bernie Sanders announced, Chris Hedges writes an article and says, you guys, he's a sheepdog. Y'all know that, right? Here's the deal that he made with the DNC in 1992, where they will never run a primary opponent against him if he runs as a Democrat and then switches to independent for his cred and then caucuses with the Democrats going forward. That was a deal he made going into the House of Representatives. I was, from Vermont when he was no longer mayor of Burlington. And that's been the deal ever since. He has always been that dude. And when you try to explain that to people, oh my God, you may have well have been like doing Piss Christ live, like in the living room of some Episcopalian minister's home. Like seriously, it was that bad. And it's because political ideology and political identity have replaced the energy that would normally go into a system of faith or a spirituality for so many people that just been spiritually captured by political identity. And you saw it in Bernie Sanders, saw it in Donald Trump. So and you still see it in AOC, although that ship's sailing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think
But
people are waking up to her idiocy.
DeSantis, Rand Paul, Lauren Boebert. I mean, it goes on and on and on, where people deify a politician, a paid professional liar.
Yeah, nothing more, man. Actors, fucking actors, spokespersons, salesmen,
Yeah.
marketing agents, which to me leads right into, dark magic and trickery and things like that, misdirection and all these darker themes that some of, that I like to get into, with like revelation of method and stuff like that, where they're doing some real underhanded shit. And it's mostly about tricking us into out of our power, out of our personal sovereignty. And it's all, as you were saying, it's always down to our consent. Someone asked me recently, well, what do you think the vaccine is all about if it's not? And by the way, just real quick, I've made statements before that I do not want to talk about any of the current event shit at all. But lately, I think I just need to get it out of my system at this point. So whatever. But they asked me what I thought the vaccine was all about if I didn't think it was to kill everybody. And I said that I think if some of us die, it's like a happy byproduct for these people. But I think the main goal is just, it comes down to our consent, one level after another, after another, after another. Not that there's not ulterior motives and creepy shit going on with the vaccine itself, but I don't know. To me, it comes down to that spiritual level where psychically we are being conditioned to give away our consent, and as we always have been. Do you see that?
I do, and I agree, but I would add to that that it is about the human organism becoming dependent on antibodies from these mRNA gene therapy drugs, so that you can't leave the dang house without multiple booster shots, because your body's ability to create antibodies on its own, your body's natural immune system, will be gone. So this is about having a permanent customer base for these manufacturers, and it's about like guaranteed from birth permanent customer base due to variants and boosters. And as we learn more and more about the probable origins of this thing, going back to Fort Detrick and who Tony Fauci was working with to fund gain of function research, the fact that we know that they specifically had the Wuhan lab through gain of function produce a bat coronavirus. And now we've got people coming forward saying, oh yeah, as a matter of fact, this was released during the military games in Wuhan, just ahead of event 201.
Was
like,
that
there's now a
was that the article I think I just saw an article where they were infecting cave bats with that about 18 months before the pandemic hit in Yuyang?
Well, yeah. China. But this is that Xi Jinping, they call her the Bat Lady. She's one of the scientists of the Wuhan lab. But I mean, so I had Dr. Piers Robinson from the Working Group on Propaganda in Syria, Working Group on Propaganda in the Global War on Terror. Very, very well respected academic. Can't believe he came onto my show twice now and enjoyed it. It's weird.
Seeing a lot of that lately.
But very, very well respected and very knowledgeable individual. And in about 2 minutes, he connected the dots with Western banks, central banks, going on an absolute printing spree starting in about 2019. to the economy of the permanent vaccine, to the World Economic Forum and the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And it is, I mean, the clips up on my Twitter is absolutely fascinating. Very easy to find at Slow News Day Show, at Piers Robinson 1. And search that up, it'll pop up immediately. But I mean, yes, I agree. This is a spiritual and a psychic war, 100%. This is about cessation of individual autonomy. In order to give up your bodily autonomy, there's a significant chunk of your soul that you have to give up with that. You have to be, I'm not going to say bereft of, but certainly broken of spirit in order to do that. And I've said for a very long time now that you know, the country definitely doesn't need a revolution, it needs ascension. That the world doesn't need revolution, it needs ascension. And that instead of, you know, going in a complete circle and starting back to where you were, how the way to ascend is to heal. And we need a planetary healing to such an extent that we may be 3 generations removed from healthy people if we started yesterday. Right. But that's something that I'm willing to work toward, man. You don't plant trees so that you can enjoy the shade. You plant trees so that your great grandchildren can enjoy the shade. That's why you do that shit.
Yes.
You know, so we've got to look at healing like that on a, you know, on a global scale.
Right. Absolutely, man. I agree. And this topic is perfect because I've been looking into a lot of different, well, my wife showed me a number of different, really brilliant lecturers dealing with inner child work and stuff like that. She's working on some stuff, and now she's got me interested in it a little bit to heal some things that I probably have repressed and everything. And doing listening to these people talk, they're talking about every one of us pretty much, man. All of us are wounded. It's like on a collective level too. Maybe it's just, you know, generation after generation of bombardment with these kinds of adversaries constantly in our lives or something. But it really is like, you know, instead of saying the inner child, we could say ego. I like that term because I'm really into the Eastern mysticism and stuff. I mean, the collective ego is running this place. You know what I mean?
Well, and to that point, to take your Eastern mysticism and blend some Western ego study to it, if Jung were here, he would say that it's the shadow that's running everything.
Absolutely.
And the people that I know that have been focused on doing shadow work, on meeting their shadow, getting to know it, not being afraid of it, and learning how to not let it run the show, they're doing okay. They're doing okay. Like, they've been through some dark shit, you know, but because they had been dedicated to doing the work, and they knew that there was a significant reward through the personal growth that the work provided, they stuck with it and are in a much better headspace to deal with, I mean, let's be honest, technocratic fascism than the vast majority of people are. And when I was talking about those opposite end 20% of people that really get it, people that really don't, and are very, 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 very adamant about pushing it, that 60% in the middle, they're coming our way. They're starting to put at least parts of this together. Hey, wait a minute. No, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It's been 18 months. I'm still wearing the fucking mask. I took the shot. I felt like shit. I took the next shot. I felt worse. Now they're telling me I got to take a booster. Now they're telling me the booster I just took isn't good in another couple of weeks. I got to take another boost. I'm still wearing the mask. I can't go to 90% of my favorite places anymore that closed down. Now I got to go to a bunch of these fucking chain bullshit places. Suck. Everybody's pissed off there. Everybody's
still
angry.
wear a mask.
Yeah. Well, except for once I walk inside, the coronavirus only exists if I am upright and walking, or in California between bites of food or sips of water. But after that, other than that, the coronavirus, this is insane, and it is supposed to be. This is that you have to break people psychologically in order to get them to give up all of their rights and all of their liberty. You have to make people so confused and so afraid that they're going to run to the nearest explanation and authority and promise that it'll go away if they just do the thing.
Right. And that's that inner child. That's that untrained, uncontrolled shadow. It's going to the safe place. It's doing the routine. It's doing what it's used to doing that keeps it safe, instead of jumping in.
So here's a way to think about it that I haven't, but it's like forcing people to revert to where they had no impulse control. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. That's
like,
that's perfect.
I mean, I don't know. I'll have to think on that for a minute, but the way that you just described it, because I've got kids, I've been through all that shit, and I know what a toddler with no impulse control looks like, and they're dangling Krispy Kremes and cash or a shot of booze, or like in front of people for this thing. And it's working on a level, but but again, there's also the last 5 years have been this period of acceleration, and the risk in accelerating and making sure that Agenda 21 happens and during 2021 so that Agenda 2030 can happen during 2030 is that you, in order to get there and like skip steps, you got to let a lot of people see what you're up to. And a lot of people have seen what they're up to, brother. And they've tried so hard to politicize it so that we don't all talk or hang out. And we've been over that shit. We've been over that shit for a couple of years. We've been talking to everybody. We've been going around to as many disparate communities with, similar goals. And those goals being more freedom, more liberty, no centralized state, no centralized currency, free association, and mutually assured aggression should you impose violence on our otherwise peaceful space.
Absolutely. Man, like I don't, it's the only time I've ever felt like an American when somebody talks like that, because like I've always been so rebellious against, I'm 36. When 9/11 happened and all that shit was going on, if I had to associate one way or the other, I was a liberal, right? I wasn't voting though. I didn't fall for any of that ever, but I was still, leaning more towards the liberal side of things. You know what I mean? And
I'd be George Bush.
Yeah. I mean,
kid, like if you're okay, correct me if I'm wrong here, and I hasten to judge anyone, but I'm going to guess that when 9/11 happened, you were along the lines of either pot smoking metalhead or pot smoking hippie kid.
A little bit of both, always.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen to Bob Marley.
Fuck George Bush, and I agree. And still to this day, fuck George Bush.
But it was immediately fuck Obama too. When my friends were like, "Are you going to come to the inauguration with us? Like, you're taking a road trip to DC." I don't want to go anywhere near DC anyway. no, thank you. You know, I didn't have any myself invested really in it, but right off the bat, seeing change, I just started to think of one of my favorite movies growing up: Consume, Obey. You know, They Live.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
immediately clear that the sides had switched, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Like, oh, the snake slithered to the other side of the aisle, but it became very clear that, oh, okay, this is just all one big funny system working together. And Lord knows how long they've been doing it.
To your point about more darker energies at play and dark magic, I mean, the Obama campaign was so riddled with occult symbolism, it was ridiculous.
Yeah. The 2012 Olympics. Oh my God. Did you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, no, it's like literally calling like opening a portal and begging for the fucking
pandemic
return. Yeah.
There was like hospital beds and nurses and a big puppeteer. Yeah. Just, oh God. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, man.
And I think that was one of the first swine flu epidemics the following year. I think it was swine flu. I can't remember 100%, but it was 2014 was swine
right
flu,
around that
2014. Time. But I mean, the same exact people that tried to scare everyone shitless back then and didn't really succeed are all part of, you know, Event 201, or all part of Health and Human Services under Trump or Biden. And a lot of those people had a lot to do with September 11th. Off Guardian has this great series of interviews. I don't know if you're familiar with Off Guardian or not.
I'm familiar with the name. I've
probably a phenomenal outlet out of the UK, that one of the very, very sane rare sane voices from that side of the pond that has been on top of all of the COVID madness from day one, and just really does incredible they describe, I mean, Mike Pompeo called WikiLeaks and Julian Assange a hostile non-state actor. And I think that Off Guardian is aspiring to, you know, at least produce journalism that would make Mike Pompeo want to refer to them as a hostile non-state actor. Yeah, no, props to the, but I don't even remember why I started talking about these guys anymore. Oh, they've got a series of interviews out and it's called COVID-19 9/11. And the graphic for it is just absolutely perfect. And they are connecting the dots between, you know, in many cases, the same actors from that original Project for a New American Century group and September 11th and all of that whole cottage industry of surveillance, you know, surveillance capitalism, essentially, but a surveillance-based economy, and now a cybersecurity-based economy, and one that is now incorporated essentially the classification of 85% of American citizens as domestic terrorists, which is just freaking wild, bro.
Yeah,
wild.
We're all domestic terrorists now. It's great. So interesting. Oh man. But you know, I still say we're gonna win in the end. I mean, the more I was just telling my wife that, like, the more obvious things become and the more these stories come out, it just makes me smile. It just makes me feel a little bit like I could turn away for a while and it's gonna be okay. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people are going through, especially in our community, man. I mean, we're all talking about the most devastating negative shit most of the time. You know what I mean? And it's difficult to deal with sometimes for a lot of us, you know. For me, I'm definitely feeling it, you know. So let's try to stick to solutions. And I think we're getting to a lot of them, you know. But yeah, you made a big move recently. You got like away from most of society, right, man?
I spent the last like 15 years in the Santa Cruz Mountains in California, which isn't any kind of a thriving metropolis in and of itself. It's in the redwood forests about an hour and 45 minutes south of San Francisco, right on the other side of San Jose. And starting about 2006, the area began to get invaded by Silicon Valley, flatlanders, who came to the mountains and were like, it's dirty,
it's naturey.
Yeah, they brought all of their NPR liberal crap with them, and all of their NIMBY crap with them, and it is really not at all the same place the I started visiting in the early 90s when my brother had moved there, to the point to where like I got divorced last year, but I mean my ex-wife moved out too because it had just gotten too crazy and it's not survivable. You're already doing what Klaus Schwab wants, where you basically own nothing and you rent. Right. It's just there's no way to get ahead there. And I mean, to the point to where my ex and I combined were making like just under $80 an hour, and we were 3 kids barely making ends meet.
It's ridiculous
because the cost of living was ridiculous. And we're not overindulgent people by any stretch of the imagination, right. But my good friend Ben Balderson, who has a fantastic show called Odin's Alchemy, just got him onto the Rockfin last week before, something like that. Has a farm up in Humboldt County. Not that kind kids, those are the neighbors. But I mean, like legit farm, animals and shit running around, kind of good stuff. And needed a builder, which I am. So I'm up here, and we're looking to organize, or at least try and find some that's already happening, freedom cell type communities up here. We're looking to network with as many people as possible, because counter economics, while we're talking about solutions, and parallel societies, while we're talking about solutions, are ways that we can wage economic war against the predator class without running out with a gun, providing every reason in the world. And this is something that's already taken place a couple of times, where parallel societies have been implemented in order to break totalitarian regimes. The most famous one I usually focus on is Czechoslovakia in 1989, the Velvet Revolution. Václav Havel wrote an essay in 78 called Power of the Powerless, where he describes what a parallel society would look like, and how it could break totalitarian regimes. Czechoslovakia in 89, the totalitarian regime would have been the Soviet Union, but I mean, you can apply it across the board. I've always said that authoritarianism is authoritarianism no matter what shape the hat is.
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't, and so when everybody flies off the handle, but this is communist, this is socialist, this is fascist, it's all totalitarianism. It is all a public-private partnership between the state and corporate entities. It is all loss of your rights, loss of your autonomy, loss of your freedom, loss of your everything. It is now belong to the state. And so when people try to label, I get a little bit fucking suspect of that. I do. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it feels like they're keeping the red versus blue game going no matter what the topic is. You know what I mean? I love the UFO community. I've been a weirdo for my whole life and I love all that stuff, but I'm totally suspect of all that shit, especially when the government's trying to sell us on it, right? So like, even in
hell
the
yeah.
UFO community, man, there's so much polarizing shit going on, and most of it's clearly orchestrated by bad actors and black hats and shit. It's ridiculous, man. They're even trying to put like racism into aliens and UFOs. One of them starting to say like, oh well, see, if you look at all the descriptions of aliens over the past century, there's all so much racism in there. It's like, oh boy, here we go. All right, I see what side of the fence this guy's on right now.
We are racist as hail against little green men with giant heads and webbed fingers. It is greenism. It is speciesism. We ought to go to AOC's re-education camp right now and get our heads right. Room 101 awaits thee. Cartoon, man. It's a cartoon.
It's a fucking cartoon. Oh man. And it's like you take psychedelics and you really see how much of a cartoon it all is. How those Matrix bars been treating you?
I gotta say, man, I was super weird, like really weirded out about getting a sponsor for the show anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of felt a little dirty about it.
You're one of them.
At least, yeah. But at least this way, at least this way, like I'm getting paid in Matrix bars. They send me a few like every other week kind of thing, so it's rad, dude. It is.
You're getting some medicine for free. That's good.
Like honestly, they're good. They work. They're stronger than you think they would be. I asked, and the predominant strain in all of the bars, they're going with like high test penis envy. Really? And then there's some golden teachers, some other, another, I can't ever remember the other strain, but like like probably about B grade to B plus grade that gets thrown in with it as filler. But I mean, they'll get you there, man. And I so I told him like flat out, like, I'm weird about this. I don't know, dude. If you let me test drive one, I'll make a decision. And but either way, happy to like, retweet you guys and help you out that way. And so they sent like a half dozen, like right off the bat, and trip glasses and a bunch of these like plastic business cards with their QR code on the back. And I left a couple in Colorado. I left a couple fucking San Francisco International Airport. And it's just like more cartoon Morpheus on one side and the QR code on the other. Oh, thank you. These guys, which are like actual trip glasses, they're not 3D glasses. They've got like fractal or sacred geo, kaleidoscope pattern like in it. They're wild. The hard plastic ones go for like $25 on eBay. These are cardboard. Damn. But still, I mean, they're just for dude.
Just to increase the hallucination.
Exactly. And I'm sorry, I don't want to turn this into a commercial or anything like that.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm glad to mention them. I think they're doing a great thing. So let's put them out there, right? As far and wide as we can.
They're legit. Yeah, no, they're legit. They are. I'm like, I can honestly say like it's something that I would, that I do take, that I do enjoy, and that I would encourage other people to do it. So if they want to send me some free shit for telling people some stuff that I would tell them anyway, word.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, I'm thinking about digging into that. I haven't taken a psychedelic in like 6 years, but I used to take a lot of psychedelics. So it's like there's a part of me that feels like my mission wasn't over, as crazy as that sounds. And
No.
yeah, so it's like I don't know how comfortable I'm gonna be, but maybe that's some inner shit that I need to work on right beforehand.
So I will tell you, because I was very nervous for about the first 2.5 years after I quit drinking, about like, because oh man, I enjoyed no longer shrooming and immediately being drunk. Like that was like so I would drink my way through a mushroom trip, but like really hit it the last, like I was a professional drunk there for a while.
I can relate, brother.
And so when whenever it was offered to me, I'm like, man, no, I don't feel like throwing up tonight anyway, and when I finally was like, you're being a bitch, you already did the thing, you already quit, there's no interest in it anymore, it's like it already stopped being fun. That already happened. You already came to that conclusion. So what are you, just stop bitching out. and so I ate like just under a quarter, and I was in like some pretty big woods with some really big trees, and I was around a bunch of other drunks. Like it was at a fucking camp out, it was a party,
Damn.
and I'm like, well, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, we're gonna fucking find out. And like, dude, I had a blast. I was fucking, like roasting drunks and telling fucking, stories from when my brother and I made moonshine and got Hank 3 lit and shit like that. And fucking like, we had some wild fucking times, bro. And I mean, it was just, it was fun. And like, there was a DMT pen that was floating around, which is weak as shit. And I would not recommend like trying to go and talk to the machine elves with it.
A DMT pen? I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine. And so, I mean, it was a wonderful experience. I was high as fuck, dude. And just, as Bill Hicks would put it, took a squeegee to my third eye. And I had found that overall, there was a lot of work that I needed to do, but there was a lot of work that I had already done. And there was still a lot that I needed to learn.
But maybe you saw it from a better perspective than you would have years earlier.
Yeah, well, there's no way I could do the show drunk. I tried being a drunk writer, and that just got me fired a lot of places.
That's amazing. Yeah, I used to tell myself that the only time I could write was when I drank.
Yes.
Yeah, I think about the stories when I'm stoned, and then do the act when I was drinking. I literally felt like Kerouac,
The 3 steps to becoming a writer are drink, hate yourself, repeat.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's so many good examples. Stephen King had to like throw the last beer can, and it had to like topple off the rest out of the trash can onto the floor before he realized he had filled the whole damn thing, and realized, oh fuck, I just wrote Cujo, or I just wrote The Shining about myself, and shit, what a horrifying novel that became when I read it, as someone realizing I had a problem and needed to kick that shit. And that book became more of a horror story than it was before. But I'm feeling great too. It's been a couple of years, and yeah, I feel awesome. I did have one interesting run-in though, where I had a really weak moment. So when I said I haven't done psychedelics in like 6 years, I tried to, like about a year ago. I had DMT, and I did not have the balls or the guts to do it. I kept pussying out. I'm like, I can't do it. I just, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to face whatever. I don't know, unnameable things. And so when I did it, I told myself, well, just have a little bit to drink. That'll just, it's okay. The inner child, the ego took right over and took the opportunity. I was just like, yeah, just do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, as DMT can be extremely intense, I did it right afterwards. And what I experienced was the weirdest psychedelic experience ever, where I felt as though I was being held to the ground and having my nose literally rubbed in shit. And it lasted for like 2.5 minutes, and that's it. The demon got off my back and I was back. And it was such a huge like slap to the ego, man. It was so vivid and just wild, man. So I don't know. It's like pretty interesting how these things can take you to different places.
Well, and that's pretty self-explanatory. It was literally even on your back. I mean,
yeah. It was so obvious, man, right off the bat. I mean, it's just so literal. Such a helping hand in a way, like to show me what I was doing wrong right off the bat.
It is, because you can theorize and you can rationalize and justify and all that shit, but when you have to go through what you're actually doing to yourself, which is something that DMT does, I would say as good or better than anything else that I have ever experienced, is show you not just, potentialities, but helps you understand what you do to you, and what you do to you does to other people. As a teacher, I think that very few things are as powerful as that, because in most cases, the ego isn't ready to learn that in real time, in real life, especially in a hostile situation. But
sometimes
if you're
we need
open,
that wake-up call.
Yeah. And if you're open to the experience in the first place, and that's what you're being shown, well, of course it's going to rattle your fucking cage. But brother, it's supposed to, hopefully that's a beautiful and positive thing, even though in the moment it may be terrifying.
I think it's all a learning lesson. Some of my worst trips were probably my best trips in retrospect. You know what I mean? So I mean, that's a good way to put it. And I'm thinking about maybe getting back into it by like micro dosing. Are you experienced with micro dosing? Because I've heard a lot of good stuff about it.
I am, and it's important to make the distinction that micro dosing isn't tripping.
Right.
It's not, and in no way, shape, or form are you getting high.
It's like CBD for weed.
What you're doing is introducing a very small amount of psilocybin into your body, like each day. And some people say immediately, some people say within 3 days, some people say within 2 weeks, depending on how they're doing it, what their protocol is. But there have been a number of significant studies that have shown that very small doses, like 3/4 of like down to like the 1/10 of a gram,
Really small dose.
Yeah, very small doses. Over, if you go, some people will do like 2 days on, a day off, like that, for a couple of weeks, and then take a couple of weeks off. Some people will do it every day for 2 or 3 weeks, and then take 2 or 3 weeks off. But the important thing is that you're not just every day, because it'll lose what it's supposed to do. So you definitely want to take breaks in it. And actually, I'm gonna have Rich Airy on Friday on the show, who's a psychedelic coach. He's got a protocol that he recommends very heavily. He's going to come on and talk about it, because I'm doing a morning show now, Monday through Friday, for about 90 minutes. And every Friday, I'm going to dedicate it to the proliferation of accurate and beneficial information about psychedelics.
Oh, I love it, man.
So Rich is going to come on and we're going to talk about that. But from personal experience, and this correlates with every single study that I've read, the amount of anxiety, depression, or trauma related stress that an individual has is alleviated significantly and relatively quickly into the protocol. And again, different for the individual. Some people say immediately, and I've noticed that when people say they've had immediate or near immediate results from microdosing, it's a general overall alleviation of tension or stress. That it's a good day. It's a good day.
It's like the background noise goes down a little bit.
Yeah.
And like the volume.
Everything's a little bit more in focus. Colors are a little bit brighter. I noticed, because I'm a carpenter, that and my eyes aren't fantastic, that my ability to see and make accurate cuts and all of that increased to a point to where my boss was like, "Oh, you should keep doing that. In fact, you're a little bit less of an asshole lately. You should definitely keep doing that."
That's awesome. Well, that's what McKenna said too. He was always talking about the visual acuity at low doses and how you could easily see how the more initiated tribes that were taking these small doses of psychedelics for hunting purposes were more prolific than other tribes. It was almost like the in crowd of doing psychedelics that way.
Well, and they've made it that, and that's where I pushed back on it in terms of the way the culture is going, because everybody sees money now, and psilocybin is
that's
getting
what worries
decriminalized or legalized in a number of places, and already all the kids want to know what strain it is. What strain is strain? It's strain. It's strain. It's got to be this strain. If it's not this strain, it's bad. And so it's already been so hyper commercialized in terms of gray market or black market that when it goes full fucking corporate, oh, dude. And behind it are these Silicon Valley demons who, on their employees' own dime, are encouraging them to microdose because they get more productivity out of them.
Right. They'll use the good
and
thing.
So yeah, here's how we can take a beneficial healing teaching substance and commercialize it and squeeze all the soul out of it. And so, we've got to be able to push back successfully against that while allowing people to make a living by being producers,
right.
Because you should be able to make a living doing production on this. You should, especially if you're fucking making delicious chocolate with it, Yeah, dude, pay your rent with that
already. It's happiness squared, man. And it also does something to a number of people that don't trust the government, don't trust big pharma. But it leads even back to the 60s when MK Ultra was going on, in the 50s and everything, where a lot of people take psychedelics and they just wrap it up in that CIA operative thing and they push it over here and go, it's evil. Yeah, psychedelics are there to confuse us. And it's really sad because those are a lot of times the people that we're on the same fighting lines with on a lot of these other topics. It's unfortunate, and I don't know.
Well,
hopefully it's changing with more of podcasts like all of ours that talk about these things and kind of synergize the different topics together, perhaps.
I I'm gonna say that, okay, so there were a lot of people that kind of felt the same way about cannabis,
Mhm.
and as cannabis became medicinally and then recreationally legal, those attitudes changed.
Mhm.
And I honestly don't know if in this timeline we've got the years it's going to take as a quasi or passing as but not really free society before the hammer comes down fully. Although I do see the legalization of drugs is one of those pacifiers that the state can put out and be like, don't rebel or
Yeah.
we'll lock you all up again.
Yeah. Look, have this, play with this toy.
But in
Shut your
terms of the
mouths.
people who are dead set against it because of the LSD's history, okay, be skeptical of that. That's fine. I have no issue with your skepticism. I enjoy LSD, but I am also kind of a scumbag. So like, I mean, like, I think if you're like already like dirty even when clean, like that's just it's what you're gonna get, it's not even sorry. And so I feel like, dude, I spent a lot of time on Widespread Panic tour, and those days were whiskey, cocaine, and LSD.
Yeah.
And very rarely any were independent of each other, and most of the time it was all three.
Right.
And like, that's just, I mean, bro, they were rough days, but
Fond
I
memories.
mean, that's just, dude. So
I mean, you're speaking my past too. It's fond memories in a way.
we were in Colorado, and I'm gonna remember the name of the ski town at some point. And it's not Kirkwood because that's Tahoe. But at any rate, it was Widespread Panic and 30 Dozen Brass Band and Keller Williams' Tiny Universe as some other band opening. And we had the whole, like, there were 4 units to these buildings, and we had the whole building, and each room or each unit had a enclosed hot tub that had a sliding glass door that would go outside too if you wanted to. And it was ridiculous. And it was weekends worth of shows, 2 days. We were at the place for like 5 days, dude. They threatened to kick us out at least 3 times. We had cops there a couple of times. It was just enjoyable.
That's so wild.
But also,
like,
but I mean, that's like, but also there's people that have only taken mushrooms, that have only had natural products in their body or as much as humanly possible, that reject chemicals outright. And I'm not going to argue with any of them about, not wanting to put LSD in the body. And it does have a very shady history.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I do think that there are, like, I know for a fact that there are chemists and people who are laying LSD crystal into liquid or onto gels or into paper, who are putting nothing but light into the process, who like draw down sacred geometry with the crystal before they even go into the breakdown process, and are doing everything they can to imbue this with the kind of positivity that one would want out of a psychedelic experience. So it does, it cuts both ways. But as with anything else, know who you're getting your shit from and whether or not they should be trusted, which brings us back to the mRNA gene therapy, which is a product that is created by known mass murderers and fraudsters. Yeah. So, I mean,
Biggest lawsuit in history.
I thought I was at the point in my life, 43, a little bit older than you. I thought that I was at the point in my life where I did not have to have the conversation with my adult friends about, hey man, aren't we over putting dangerous drugs in our body that we don't know anything about from people we don't trust? The only people who have any price to pay is us. Isn't that? Or we're not past that? Fuck.
Yeah, it's hard, man. People are losing friends. You know, a lot of people are on the outs with each other. I'm hearing it left and right, and it's so unfortunate. But I think it's just change is difficult, and growth is painful. And we're in whichever way you cut it, we're in some sort of growth period. And I think we're going to come out the other side better than we were before if we all come together. I think it's happening.
I agree, and I want to impart to the people who listen to this that enduring meaningful change never comes from a place of comfort.
Right.
That's not going to happen. You're not just going to kick back and all of the sudden, you know, the technocratic panopticon will be gone.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Gotta do the work.
There's no government coming to save you, no politician coming to save you. You know, you may be in a very supportive community, but ultimately you have to be the support for that community as well. So nobody is going to save you but you. And there's this whole kind of I don't know. I get it's part of what I'm starting to build presentations on, and there's a book in it about removing the ism from anarchism, recognizing it as a relationship. That relationship is you do not speak for me, and all other interactions flow from that point.
Yeah, the original meaning of that. Oh, go ahead.
No. What were you gonna say?
Oh, just the original meaning for that symbol with the circle with the A in it. It isn't the edgelord one, is you know, with the A, you know, coming out left and right. It's an A that's enclosed in a circle, and I guess it stands for order without leaders. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, cool. I guess I'm a teenage anarchist again, because that sounds great.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not no rules. It's just no
rulers. Yeah. It's order without rulers. Yeah,
exactly. And look, I mean, we're in an anarchist relationship right now.
Yeah, feels good.
And you know, you don't have authority over me. I don't have authority over you. At no point are we going to use violence to exert our influence over one another. And if for any reason, you know, insanity, neither of us would be calling the police. We wouldn't be bringing, you know, the arbiters of the state's monopoly on violence to come to either of our quote unquote aid. It's not going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, these things can take place in all of our associations. They can. In almost every case where there's conflict, it's because of an arbitrary or theft-based rule or law that the state has applied into the situation.
Right.
And we can work things out on our own, not because we're all in it together, but because it's in our own self-interest. Violence is expensive.
Yeah.
Violence is immensely expensive. And that's why we have a military industrial complex, because they profit from that.
Right.
But there's also profit in peace. So my whole point to this, and then I'm sorry.
No worries.
Is that I had somebody ask me to like bring together like anarcho-communists and anarcho-capitalists. Like, how can you do that? How can you do that? And it's, well, everybody agrees that taxation is theft. And even if you think that there should be a centralized state and those taxes should go to, be used to take care of your community, you can at least agree that we are being robbed from every time there's a transaction, because that tax money is not going to anything that ANCOM supports. It's all going to blow the shit out of brown people in another country. It's all going to bail out Wall Street or bail out a bank or bail out, some other titan of industry that ANCOM is hardwired to hate in the first place. Right. So you can engage in a conversation about an economic style, or at least counter economics as a philosophy, where we remove our fiat if that's how we want to exchange currency. We possibly recognize a cryptocurrency as currency. We make for damn sure it's one of the couple actually private cryptocurrencies and not surveillance coins like Bitcoin, or Ethereum, or Monero, also a surveillance coin, not private, not as private as they purport at any rate. But we can do these things, and people on the quote unquote left, people on the quote unquote right can at least agree that that most of the problems with capitalism aren't because the ism itself denotes exploitation. It's because the ism itself is enacted by a centralized power structure. Centralized power structures are always and only going to be corrupt and reward corruption and sociopathy. And there's a way to approach something measuring an equal exchange of energy that we can achieve, that we can call economics, without necessarily saying this is capitalism or this is socialism or something like that. We may have an entirely different word for it, but what we're working towards is that voluntary association and that something equal, approaching an equal exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. Voluntarism is the closest ism I've come to calling myself in a long time, I think, and I mean, I think for us to live like this, just going back to the beginning, I think we all got to do this shadow work as a whole world, kind of, if we want to live without the fake dependency of these horrible parasites. It's time to do the work and go through the uncomfortable feelings and deal with it all. Maybe the world does need a giant dosing, but half of us would go crazy, right?
So during that period when they hadn't, you remember that period of chaos where they hadn't announced Joe Biden as the president yet, and they didn't know what the votes were, and there was my co-host on Slow News Day, Glory Jones, had proclaimed me interim president. Said, you're interim president. I said, okay, well, fantastic. As interim president, I am going to first order of business, mandatory DMT. That's what we're doing. We're doing mandatory DMT. Everyone is going to go meet the Clockwork Elves. That's what you're going to do. And the elves are going to sort you out. And then after the machine elves, once we get past the machine elves, we go to the release of all political prisoners the United States has, is the legalization of drugs, and then the immediate and peaceful dissolving of the federal government. That was my platform as interim president. I appointed my boss at the MCSC network, Nico House, to be the director of the CIA under the sole condition that he immediately disband and abolish the CIA and start a 3-day to maybe 2-week department of minding your own goddamn business. I had co-vice presidents by my Kendra Christian, who was co-hosting with me on the Free Assange Vigil series for a while, and John McAfee's pirate yacht were my co-vice presidents. And because I felt like, if it really came down to it, we could, run the country from international waters.
Hey, if you have to.
John McAfee gave me one of his last interviews as a free man.
Yeah, man.
He was on the boat. He was in international waters. If you listen to that interview in a certain way, you could almost say that he was like calling his shot and saying that he was going to not kill himself in a Spanish jail.
Right.
Very interesting guy.
Yeah, man.
John McAfee. That dude was wild. Is wild. I would like to think that he's Pirate King it up on another Pirate King yacht and another different, part
Could be,
of the ocean
man.
now. I would.
I just know he's
Janice. Sorry, real quick. Janice is putting out that like the McAfee didn't kill himself. Stuff like every time she talks about it.
Well, I mean, come on.
She was.
This happens. They're treating us as children, right? I mean, that's why it's a fucking cartoon, because they are so confident now that they can literally talk to their toddlers now. We're all toddlers. So they can just repeat the same shit all the time. And people, they think that no one's noticing. And I think that 60%, there's a lot of quiet, patient people, and we're not quiet. We're not in that, but at the same time, we're passively waiting for a moment to just, I don't know. It's weird not to go off in a random direction, but it's unfortunate that the revolution is happening as gradually as Andromeda is crossing into our galaxy. It's so gradual. I mean, not to us, but for a lot of people, it's very gradual. So they're stuck and they're like, should I quit? Should I head for the hills? No, not yet. All right. Are other people doing it? Should I be doing something? When is too late? And it's just panic and panic and panic. And they get it. I'm guilty of it too. It's a vicious cycle that this thing is causing,
So I would say that, it not necessarily run for the hills unless you want to, but what I would say is even if you're in, like a decent sized community or whatever, you have the opportunity. I look at the collapse of society as a purely positive thing.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to too.
And
it's the ascension.
And and look, anytime somebody muddies that with like it's the Great Awakening, I want to fucking stomp a mud hole in the ass. But that's an entirely different subject because we're talking about good things right now.
Yes.
And I look at this as an opportunity for us to really prove that free association, nonviolent principles, and the recognized relationship that you don't speak for me and I don't speak for you and all other interactions stem from that recognition, we can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is how people want to live, that this is how people are supposed to live, that we're not supposed to necessarily be crammed in on top of each other with a centralized authority telling everyone exactly how many pieces of toilet paper they can use to wipe their ass every day.
Right.
And I'm not saying like disband cities or anything. Like in Paris, right after the revolution, there was something that was probably as close to an attempt at an anarchist society as the French have really ever got. and they called it like the Paris Commune. And what they said, the people, the members, you know, the people that put it together, was that this was libertarian socialism. Because in its original inception, the ideas surrounding anarchy were referred to as libertarian. And the realization of like that stateless society was referred to as achieving libertarian socialism. This is 1780s, 90s, you know, and it hadn't been, socialism hadn't been fully like polluted with Marx yet. It was just it was a much more nebulous concept. But in its origin, that's where the anarchists started. And there is a pretty broad and fascinating history within the anarchist movement, most of it unfortunately violent. But once you get into the 60s and 70s and the more like capitalist thinking and voluntarist thinking, agorist thinking behind anarchy, you start to see more and more of the nonviolent principles making their way in. More and more this is about, you know, the sanctity of the individual, the sanctity of a, you know, free association, and less about, you know, to each according to his need kind of thing. But because it takes it, that self-healing I was talking about, you know, or that like that's a collective thing, that's a form of collectivism I can support, right? Is collective healing, you know. If that can occur, if we can encourage that, if we can work with each other to do that, that's essentially all it takes to recognize that relationship. You don't speak for me, I don't speak for you. That's okay. That's okay. Right. My feelings aren't going to get hurt that way. I'm, you know, I'm doing okay. Yeah. I don't need you to speak for me, and I don't need speaking for you isn't going to complete me. It's not. And I think that that's where a lot of people get sucked in, is they feel like they're actually speaking for other people when they go out and say things like, you know, defund the police without understanding what it means, or you know, let's go storm the Capitol without understanding what that means.
Let's erase history because we don't understand any of it.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it's, in terms of, there's a couple of different ways to look at that. Again, on one hand, it's kind of a, you know, false representation of history, but if that's the case, then put up a statue next to it.
Fair enough.
You know, put up a statue next to it and tell a more complete story. But, you know, like actually encourage people to learn about what happened. Don't just go, oh, and then, you know, here's the Rockefeller approved version of what happened.
Yeah.
And we swear that's all that happened. Don't ask questions.
Well, it looks like we've been kind of popularizing this DIY movement in popular culture everywhere for like a decade now, and it almost seems like we've been trying to prepare for something, and now the more independent we get, the less we can depend on this system, this middleman between us and our own personal growth. And I think just the more awareness we spread about it, the more ears it catches, the more eyes it catches, and the more good ideas spread, and people start to become more inclined to embrace their freedom and embrace an idea that they could take their life into their own hands and decide for themselves what they do tomorrow, you know?
Well, and embracing freedom is a full embrace of self. Good, ill, everything in between. And you are going out of your way to prevent yourself from being a free human by not loving yourself, by not wanting yourself to prosper. You can't claim to want your community to prosper if you don't make that happen for you. And this is that blending of economies, that kind of like Ayn Randian doctrine of the gospel of selfishness, you know, where you're not really a whole person if you're not living for yourself. Well, there's a relative truth there is, and you really can't effectively do anything for your community if you're not doing everything you can to make yourself a whole person. So there is kind of there's got to be a reckoning with people where, hey, look, man, making a living is kind of the point, you know, being able to not just survive, but, you know, being able to thrive in not just your own environment, but your community, or the ability to travel and go and, you know, spread some of your love around too. You know, that's a perfectly good and natural thing that's supposed to happen. You can't hate fucking like wanting to provide for your family. That's just that's
bad
insanity.
Energy right off the bat.
It is, you know, because if you hate providing for your family, you're more than willing to let any monster do it. And I am not. I'm not.
Damn right, man. And on that note, Steve, thank you so much for joining us, man. Really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. And thanks for breaking my COVID bubble, because I really haven't talked about any of this shit in a long time. And I didn't want to, but I needed to release the negativity out of me, you know?
Hey, no problem. Thank you for having me on. And like you got to get this out. And I do believe that you're right. I believe that my gut is right on this, and that there are significantly more people that understand that something is deeply, deeply wrong than there are who think that everything is going the way that it's supposed to. And that despite the never ending onslaught of propaganda to keep us from talking to each other, that more and more and more people are going, you know what? No, I do have more in common with my neighbor than I do, you know, Tucker Carlson or Rachel Maddow or, you know, whoever else, any politician. And so I see a lot of reasons to be positive, to, you know, wake up and embrace everything that's coming at us, even though the nature of what we cover is almost always way too dark. Right? There's
that shadow
so much good out there, so much that we can still do and still get to do and will do regardless of what an authoritarian state tries to tell us anyway.
And hey, like you said, it's uncomfortable. We got to go through that ordeal. Sometimes that's what it takes to wake people up and shake them loose from the mental cognitive chains that they've placed on themselves. So Steve, you got Slow News Day. Where can my audience find you? You got that new morning show too. That's awesome.
I'm stoked on it. I really am. I recommend everybody just go to the Rockfin and follow the show there. It'll save you a lot of trouble from trying to follow us on platforms that monitor and punish us for our speech. So rockfin.com/slownewsday. Slownewsdayshow.com is a website. It's under construction right now because we're adding a bunch of new links, including a link to a merch store. We're going to be taking pre-orders this Sunday. Let's see. I am also at least once a week on aftermath.fm and iHeartRadio with our Sunday show, which is 1 p.m. on the East Coast, 10 a.m. on the West Coast. And we'll be hanging out with the editors for Off Guardian this weekend. That's going to be a blast. The morning show has just got a lot of good things going on with it, and that is 7:30 a.m. on the West Coast, 10:30 a.m. on the East Coast till it runs 90 minutes ish, sometimes a little bit more. Fantastic things coming up with the show, and I have a brand new podcast that I will be doing the official announcement for here very, very soon, but I'm very excited about it. It is going to be the most like PG-13 thing I've ever done. I'm trying to make it as accessible as humanly possible. Going to be joined frequently by just some absolute killers, and we'll have hopefully be able to nudge people out the door a little bit.
Yeah, just trick them with the soft stuff first, right? PG-13 lets you in the door, you know. All right, man. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody have a great night.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, vegetarian. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay? I mean...